My name is Kelly Carnahan. I am one of the training coordinators here at Ask Resource Center, and I will be hosting this webinar along with a few other of my colleagues. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to share about Ask Resource Center. Pam, if you could go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. Ask is a family-focused nonprofit organization whose mission is to empower the families of people with disabilities. We provide individualized support, collaborative advocacy, training, resources, and leadership development for Iowa families and children with disabilities or special healthcare needs, ages birth through 26, and the professionals who serve them. We thank you for joining us for this webinar today titled 4+ Services. Our presenter will be Pam Woelber, our transition coordinator for Ask Resource Center.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So again, my name is Pam Woelber. I'm the post-secondary coordinator for Ask Resource Center. Personally, I am a mother to 5, and all of my kiddos have some special need and have received services or continue to receive services in school and as an adult. Zachary is 31 and well into adulthood. My daughter is 27, and she received early access and IEP services in school, and she currently receives adult services. Lexi is a senior in high school, and we're just really in the trenches right now of transition planning. And then Evie is a sophomore in high school, and Charlie is a freshman. And so we'll be beginning to get in the trenches with both of them as well. Professionally, I have a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation. And then I worked for 22 years as a transition coach and family and educator coordinator, and had lots of opportunities to work with families, students, and educators around this topic of post-secondary transition. So today we're going to talk about transition services for ages 18 to 21. These post-secondary transition services are an important part of free and appropriate education, FAPE, under the Individual with Disabilities of Education Act. So this law ensures that students can receive transition services that will help them learn important skills for their future, to help prepare them for independent living, learning, and working. So definition of 4+ services: they are secondary services which are part of the student's IEP secondary schooling and are included on his or her IEP. And the purpose of the 4+ services is to fulfill unmet transition needs resulting from the student's disability. So I highlighted the unmet transition need because you're going to hear me talk about that often. That's a real key component to being eligible for 4+ services. High expectations are an essential component to 4+ services. And I would like to share my own journey that I've taken with my daughter, Toria. And I believe that it is a good example of why high expectations, even in high school, are so important for students' future. So, like I said, my daughter Tori is 27 and she has an intellectual disability. I did ask her for her permission to use our story and she agreed. I will provide an overview without sharing specific details, focusing on the importance of having high expectation. Tori currently lives in her own apartment and does well with the supports that she receives. However, she has always struggled with employment. When she was a junior in high school, she got her first job, but it did not go well. And maintaining employment has been a constant struggle and challenge for her. During Tori's transition planning in high school, I did set high expectations for her. I believe she could live in her own apartment with supports. And last October, she moved from a waiver home into her first apartment. I believe that she is entirely capable of working in a competitive job, and this belief has been a source of ongoing struggle. And at times, I feel like I'm the only one who holds this view, including Tori herself. She has admitted to me on more than one occasion that she would prefer not to work. And honestly, at times it would be easier to lower my expectations, stop meeting with her adult service providers, and just let her stay home without working. Over the past 8 years, I have learned that as Toria's mom and guardian, I must advocate fiercely for the services she requires. No one else will advocate on her behalf, and the barriers are numerous. These barriers include adult service providers not being obligated to serve my daughter. When she decides she doesn't want to work, the service providers are quick to dismiss her as a client. There is also a need that I need to balance in terms of encouraging her to reach her potential without imposing my values on her. We have entered we have encountered huge challenges because her needs don't fit into the existing programs or options. Despite the challenges, she can work in a competitive job. This is what is best for her, and I continue to try to hold everyone accountable to make that happen. And it is not easy. I had initially expected Tori to work full-time in a competitive job, but she is currently employed at Casey's General Store for 24 hours a week. Experience and evidence suggests that this is about the maximum she can handle while still maintaining good mental health. I continue to hold high expectations for her in competitive employment, but I have learned to allow those expectations to be informed by her experiences and the data that we gather. Pacer Center is a parent and information center out of Minnesota, and they have done a lot of research around this topic of high expectations, and they have provided numerous informational sheets, that type of thing. Some points that I thought were very well worth noting and highlighting from their material include having high expectations can lead to better transition outcomes. Young people with disabilities who are not expected to do much might end up living isolated lives and missing out on chasing their hopes and their dreams. And families may need to speak up for higher expectations and more challenges to school programs, as well as better options for education after high school. And I would also like to add better options for working after high school. I took this out of code, IDEA, Individuals and Disabilities Education Act, the regulations. There's a lot to it, but there were just certain things that I thought just really, really showed how this connects, this topic of high expectation connects with the code. So it talks about 30 years of research that has demonstrated that having high expectations for individuals with special needs, this talks about general education, curriculum, that type of thing. But I also believe in terms of for transition services, having high expectations in the area of transition services. Because if we go down there to II, it says to be prepared to lead productive and independent adult lives to the maximum extent possible. And then that last bullet or that last bold statement is about strengthening the roles and responsibility of parents. And this talks about that they have meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their child. But I believe that strengthening that role and responsibility and that advocacy in parents can also help in terms of working with adult services. Once the child is done with school and into adult learning opportunities. And that advocacy role does not end when a student is done with high school. So high expectations can be achieved with the right support, creativity, and the right people. However, there are barriers and it can require a significant amount of effort. So I just wanted to talk just briefly to parents that have children with significant disabilities. I wanted just to emphasize that this applies to your child as well. Each child's journey will be individualized and unique, and it may be very challenging, often feeling like an endless series of battles. But don't hesitate to share your ideas about how you envision your son or daughter succeeding in life as independent as possible, being a lifelong learner, and working in a competitive employment environment. There are initiatives, there are supports out there. Sometimes it's hard to find them. Sometimes it's very hard to find the people that can help with that. But Iowa does want to be a state that holds competitive employment as a value. So seek out the people who can help you create and implement those opportunities. So questions to ask yourself. Do you have high expectations for your child? Does the school share those same expectations? What will it take to accomplish those expectations? What support will your child need? And who can you find that will team up with you to get it accomplished? So we have some common misunderstanding about 4+ that I just wanted to go into. Misunderstanding number one, students with an IEP automatically go to school until the age of 21. So in order to qualify for 4+ services, a student must have an unmet transition need that requires special education services and specially designed instruction. So what is it about that need that needs additional instruction to help them be successful? So a couple of other things, the IEP team reviews this decision during an annual meeting. And so conversations around unmet transition need and 4+ services should start right away and having conversations. And every single year it builds on itself. What are those unmet needs that are keeping them from being able to be successful, and putting in goals, services, activities to help meet those needs. Misunderstanding number two, 4+ services are only available when a 4+ program exists in a district. So 4+ services are individualized, that are based upon students' unmet transition needs. So districts might have different names for programs that they have within their system, like Senior Plus or 12+, or maybe I've heard of Career Academy, or may not have an established program. But schools have to make sure that services are created to ensure FAPE, free and appropriate education, even if the services are outside of an established program. And misunderstanding number three, 4+ services should only be discussed during the senior year. So the final decision will be made in the senior year. Um, but the earlier that these discussions take place, the more effective the planning process should be. Unfortunately, I have been part of IEP meetings where the discussion hasn't been, and that there's almost been understanding or misunderstanding that the student would go until the age of 21. And so the parent comes into the IEP meeting, and for the very first time, they hear that their child doesn't qualify for 4+ services. This should not happen. It should not feel like a surprise. Um, so until the last minute to discuss 4+ services could impact the effectiveness and even the options that are available for that child. So the next thing we're going to talk about is unmet transition needs. So how is an unmet transition need determined? So as I begin to talk about this, and if you were here last week, you would notice, I hope, that how it's determined, it's how it's been determined their entire time that they've been in school. It starts with transition assessment. That's where it needs to start. So we conduct transition assessment for the 3 areas of living, learning, and working. Then we work on developing the post-secondary expectations. They're those one sentence things, statements that project into the future and are measurable. Then the team should list the skills that are needed in order to meet the post-secondary expectation and determine whether or not the student has those skills. The the skills that a student doesn't have then become an unmet transition need. And those need to be addressed by goals with specially designed instruction, classes, services, and/or supports. So there's 2 possible outcomes. One, here the student has the skills needed to achieve their post-secondary expectations, their PSEs, or needs were identified that will hinder the student's ability to meet their post-secondary expectations. So I have an example here that we can kind of go through. As I was preparing for this webinar, I wanted to add examples. It seemed like the more examples that I added, the more examples seemed to need to be. And so I just want to touch base a little bit in that this process here, in many ways, is not black and white. It ends up being kind of gray. And what it does is it really requires really digging in, having good discussions, and then the IEP team coming to consensus on what ends up being an unmet transition need. And so it all needs to happen within the IEP team. But here's an example. Summary of assessments related to living. So Lexi, she can take care of her basic needs, but she requires prompts. She's able to do her laundry. She's able to cook meals. She has some money skills, but she does not have her driver's license, and she relies on others for transportation. So then if we take here, we take a look at the post-secondary expectation for living, which is Lexi will live in a waiver home. And so in a waiver home, they will be able to continue to work on her independently taking care of her hygiene needs and household chores. They will be able to help provide for her transportation or help her learn how to do the bus, that kind of thing. And so she really is set up in a way that she doesn't need additional specially designed instruction in school because those are needs that can be taken care of in the waiver home. Let's take a look at learning. So a summary of assessments related to learning. Mike is currently at the seventh grade level in math. However, his progress monitoring data indicates a decline. He's not improved his scores in the last 5 assessments. School-wide assessments show that he's performing well below his peers. And additionally, he struggles with executive functioning skills. His post-secondary expectation for learning is that he wants to attend a 2-year school to receive a degree in IT. So if you take a look at some of the concerns or the needs that he has in the area of math, I know that the IT class does require math. Um, and those executive functioning skills as well. He's going to need to be able to improve those in order to be successful in this 2-year college. And so, as a unmet needs places, he could potentially receive some support in a community college. There are several throughout the state of Iowa where a student can do a 4+ program at a community college to get that support and to receive specially designed instruction. And then finally, let's take a look at working. Lexi does not have a paid job. She struggles with taking feedback. She struggles with maintaining consistency in her attendance. Um, she excels on some days, but is unfocused on other days. She just hasn't had a lot of experience in the area of work. She's really not able to identify what she would really like to do, and she's never filled out a job application or interview. And so, with her post-secondary expectation, she's going to obtain a part-time job to gain experience with the long-term goal of being full-time employed. So it's not real specific. And so she would potentially qualify for some type of program or services that are going to really, really work on some career exploration and opportunities to help her improve those work skills. So the student has the skills needed to achieve their post-secondary expectations in all areas of living, learning, and working. And so what that means is that they're ready to graduate and exit from special education services. At that point, the district is no longer responsible for fate to the individual or to the student. Or unmet needs were identified that hinder the student's ability to meet one or more of their post-secondary expectations in the areas of living, learning, and working. And so then at that time, the IEP team determines the goals, services, supports to be implemented through 4+ services. So let's talk about some key features of 4+ services. Services are individualized for each student. So services could include a full or partial day. They may not even be required for the whole entire school year. They could be provided at the high school, a work experience site, a community site in the community. It could be an established program, but it doesn't need to be or have to be. But there are several programs throughout some school districts. The bigger school districts have programs that can meet those individual needs for the student. The resident school district is responsible for 4+ services. They're responsible to pay for and to monitor those 4+ services. And transportation is also the responsibility of the school district. Once a student receives their diploma, the school's obligations are complete. So a student can walk across the stage with their graduation, their peers, their class at graduation, and they may receive a certificate, or maybe they'll just receive the folder with nothing in it. But they will not receive their diploma if they're still getting 4+ services. A diploma will be given if they have met graduation requirements and 4+ services are ended. A student could decide that they no longer want 4+ services, and if they have met graduation criteria, they can get their diploma at that time. So I have two examples that I'm going to just kind of go through to see what you think. So as I provide this information, just kind of as I have talked, think about what you think about these scenarios. Paige is 18 years old and requires significant assistance with her daily living as she cannot independently manage her personal care needs, cooking, cleaning, or laundry. Last year, the school district supported her by providing a paraeducator to accompany her to rehabilitative services. Paige thrives in these services, and the school maintained that support until she could participate independently and successfully. By the time she is ready to graduate, Paige will have completed all her high school credits. On her last IEP, the following were her post-secondary expectations. For living, Paige will continue to live at home with her parents. For learning, Paige will attend day-hab services. For working, Paige will not work as an adult. What do you think? With the information presented, would Paige be eligible for 4+ services? The IEP team determined that Paige did not qualify for 4+ services. Despite her significant needs related to personal care and daily living skills, it was concluded that she would always require some level of support. Regarding her post-secondary expectation in learning, the school implemented day habilitative services last year, which enabled a gradual reduction in the support she needed over time. Day habilitation is now firmly established, and Paige can participate without the assistance of a paraprofessional. Lastly, concerning her post-secondary employment expectations, Paige's family does not see her working in the community. So now I just wanted to circle back to the whole high expectation conversation. I understand and totally respect families' decision on whether or not they want their child, or they want their child to work as an adult. When those decisions are made so early in a student's, like around their 8th grade, freshman, even sophomore, when that decision is made, then that kind of cuts off the ability to put in services and explore what other opportunities, to be creative of how this individual could work in competitive employment. And so I guess I just really would like to encourage people to think early. It's always easier to kind of at the end say, nope, this person isn't going to work. But as a freshman, to think about what that might look like and continually try to put in those services that would make that happen. Example scenario number 2. Amanda is 17 years old and will complete all of the required credits for high school by May. She has faced significant challenges in attending classes and managing the social aspects of high school. Until now, Amanda has not had any job opportunities. She possesses skills necessary for daily living, but often requires reminders to use them effectively. She aspires to attend a community college. However, she needs to gain the skills to consistently participate in classes and advocate for herself. When encountering material, she needs help understanding. According to her last individual education IEP, the following were outlined as her post-secondary expectation. Amanda will continue to live with family until she can move into a group home. For learning, Amanda may want to attend a college but is unsure. And working, Amanda does not have a specific career in mind. What do you think? With the information presented, would Amanda be eligible for 4+ services? So the IEP team has determined that Amanda qualified for 4+ services. Assessments revealed that she has unmet needs in learning and working, and the school district doesn't have a program to address those IEP needs. The team began to think outside of the box. So Amanda will be participating in a college course titled Career Exploration. This course will help her assess her interest in taking additional college classes and guide her in exploring potential career paths. To develop her work skills, the school will provide volunteer opportunities that allow her to earn work credit. This experience will yield valuable data regarding her ability and her capacity to complete assigned tasks in a job setting. So with all of that said, I'm wondering um, if there are any questions that anyone may have.
Hi, Pam. Thanks for that information. This is Mari, and it looks like we do have a question that came in. So, a question is, what if my child is a junior and nothing has been mentioned about 4+ services at the IEP meetings?
So I think at the next IEP meeting, or even um, if you've already had the IEP meeting this year, I would call an IEP meeting to say that you want to have some discussions around 4+ services and what that might look like, and kind of let the IEP team determine, or with those I determine what they might look like or what steps need to happen to have that be considered for sure. We have an information sheet around 4+ services that you could provide the school if they seem like they don't really know or they're not familiar with that terminology.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to just hit on what are those unmet needs, right? And so how to address those needs, and it could be done in lots of different ways, but maybe 4+ would be an option for that. Okay, great. So another question that came in are, what are the next steps when a family and school district don't agree on 4+ services? And so my take on that would be, again, helping to identify those unmet needs is kind of the first step. If there's a difference of opinion on what that might look like or how to address those needs, if the family feels strongly about 4+ services, then they can ask the school for a prior written notice of that decision. If the school is suggesting or the IEP team is saying that the student doesn't qualify. So that's definitely something you can ask for, is a prior written notice on that decision. It looks like we have another question. If my district has a 4+ services program, does my child have to go to that program? And what if it doesn't meet her specific unmet needs? That's a great question.
That's a really good question. So if it doesn't meet the unmet needs that were identified through the assessment information, then it would be the requirement, I guess, of the school district to either add components to that program that would meet those needs. But the key is that the school district is meeting the unmet needs that were identified through the assessment.
Yeah, I think the IEP team can get creative. It doesn't have to be the program that's existing. It could be something completely different than that. Or it could be partial day in that program and a partial day, at the community college or a work experience site or really whatever else is appropriate. So, thinking outside the box, those services can be just about anything. Okay, so another question is you mentioned some college programs for 4+ services. How do I learn more about these options in Iowa? Um, some school districts have their program that is at the community college. I think not every community college has those options available, but let's see. I'm trying to think if I think there's a website that has a listing of those programs. I'll see if I can find it real quick here. Otherwise, I think it's something to explore with your IEP team. What's available, what is that need in the first place? And then how do we meet that need? And so technically, I suppose it could be a community college in any part of the state, I think, as long as it meets the students' needs, unmet transition needs. So let me see if I can find that resource. Any other questions? Oh, here's it's the Prairie Lakes AEA website has a list of the community college programs that do 4+. And so here I'm
Through the whole
dropping,
state of Iowa.
it looks like it, yep. Or at least 5 of them. Next question. So, as a parent, if I indicate that my child will live with me, does that mean they won't qualify for 4+? Again, I think, it depends. That is something that it's all about those unmet needs. And so, what is it that your student needs to be working on in order to be successful living at home? And I think that, the team could be a little creative in saying, maybe the goal is for the student to live at home with parents, but live as independently as possible in the home with family. And so maybe that language would help the team to see the possibility of some opportunities to work on living skills, even if they're going to live at a family home or maybe a group home setting type of thing,
I
or
would
not
really,
independently.
so if, as a parent, if you have, especially in this living area, if you have some ideas or if you have some thoughts of, if he had this skill, he would be able to live more independently within our home. And if you have that as an idea, you are part of that IEP team, and that is assessment information, and that should be considered within that IEP team discussion.
Thank you.
So
Another, oh, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Just another
Can it,
question that came in is, can a district say we don't do 4+ services? You want to answer that, Pam?
so yep, not legally. If there are unmet transition needs, the school district is obligated to address them.
Yep. And so, like she said, we could be done in a ton of different ways. But, you know, districts really shouldn't say we don't have anything available beyond 18. If there's an unmet transition need, then that's the IEP team's responsibility to address that.
So, transition services or the services that are done, isn't going to potentially, I would say, but is it going to look the same as it has for that student throughout high school? So it's not a continuing of the same type of services. It all is about, and so it may not be a full day like it has been up until this time. It even, I was part of a school team that really figured out it was around stamina that the student needed to increase like stamina, that type of thing. And so then they determined how much time was what was needed. And then that ended up being that student's 4+ service going into the next year. And I think it ended up being, maybe like a 3-hour period of time. So there's a lot of creativity and a lot of being able to design it according to what the student needs.
This is Ask's contact information. As it does show up here, we do have an office in Johnston, Iowa, but our employees are out and about and in the state. And so there may not be somebody in the office. So if you need help from us, please utilize our website. I'm going to drop in our contact us form. If you have specific questions that you want answered for your family or your situation, you can use this contact us form and fill out your questions that you have, and one of our staff will get back to you within a day or two to answer those questions and provide those resources. You can also use those 2 phone numbers listed there to leave a voicemail with us. And again, the same process is one of our staff will get back to you within a few days. Again, or if you have additional questions beyond what is going on in your situation and just questions for Ask as an organization, feel free to email us at info@askresource.org. You can follow us on Facebook for any updates to our organization and what is happening in the world related to disabilities. We will make sure you stay informed with states and federal guidelines that are coming out. And if you want to come back and rewatch this, or you were unable to watch it today, you can find all of our old webinars and today's on our YouTube page. So feel free to use those resources at any time. Thank you all so much for attending today. We really appreciate your time. Please join us next week for one last session on transition back with Pam over, what's the last one I'm forgetting,
Yeah,
Pam?
4-3 graduation requirements,
Graduation
4333.
requirements. There's a lot of 4s in transition, so I had to remember which one. Yes, 4333 graduation requirements. So join us next week, same time, noon to 1, for our last webinar until next fall. Thank you all for coming today, and we hope to see you back next week.